Ace Podcast.
Hey everyone, this amazing ESO Network show is brought to you by our fine sponsor, Amazon.com. Please remember to shop Amazon for all your geeky needs, no matter what time of the year it is. All you need to do is go to esopodcast.com/ESO Amazon, or click on the Amazon banner on the ESO Network webpage to go to our e-store. It's the best way to shop and the best way to support this program, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. Okay, that's enough of me babbling for now. Now on with your regular scheduled show.
Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations. You have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up, and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile-friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
I'm Chris Farrell from the official GonnaGeek.com podcast, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other geeky podcasts over at GonnaGeekNetwork.com, and get ready, because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
On our latest episode, Josh Pederson and I share our thoughts on the confirmed Obi-Wan picture now in development and decide if this is a good move or a Jedi mind trick for the Star Wars franchise. We also talk Crackdown 3's delay, and is a $10 a month movie pass too good to be true? Mike Crockett from the wrestling podcast About Nothing also stops by to preview SummerSlam. Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast checks in with the top players and strategies for your upcoming draft, plus clips from the latest Super BS Gamescast and Guardians of the Geek from Humannequin Media, and another hit song from Plazma Z. It's another aerial array of podcasting touchdowns we have for you today as we reach our next stop, the PCC Multiverse.
Don't be alarmed. The quasi-shimmering light before you is a trans-dimensional gateway to other worlds, other voices, other thoughts, and other realities. Up feels like down, and down feels like the number 7 on a Wednesday morning. Don't worry. That quivering, blood-boiling sensation under your eyebrows is all a part of the charm. Welcome to the PCC Multiverse.
And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos. How is everyone doing out there today? We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast. And I'll tell you what, it's been another great week of pop culture news and information and all that fun stuff. And who better to break it down with me today than my good friend? He is the battalion chief of Humannequin Media. It's Josh Pederson. How are you, my friend?
What up, what up? I'm good, man. Just trying to figure out how this Netflix here works on this Sony box that I hardly ever play until recently.
I hear you, but with Netflix, it could be changing over the course of the next couple of years with some additions and some subtractions as well. We talked about it on a previous episode, so Netflix itself is going to be changing very, very soon. And with the Defenders coming out very, very soon, at least the first 4 episodes, I'm definitely excited about watching that, so you and I can gauge exactly if the Netflix Marvel arrangement is still going to be good going forward. So that's something definitely to look forward to there. Also, something definitely good to look forward to is all the great stuff that's happening at Humannequin Media, including another new arrival. So tell us what's going on with Humannequin Media.
Honestly, man, I don't even know anymore. There's so much stuff. I can't even keep track of it. It's not even me like going, hey, let's do this. It's just people coming up to me and saying, hey, can you do this? And I want to tell them, no, I don't have time, but I don't have the heart to do it. So I just end up with more stuff than I know what to do with. there's a new podcast out called Gardens of the Geek. It's kind of I guess a revamp of an old podcast, but not really, just a rebranding or something. But yeah, so that's going to be a bi-weekly thing. It has the guy Keith from What About This as part of that, and they talk comic books and comic book movies and a lot of stuff that related to nerd geekdom, I guess would be the word for that.
I guess so. See, I still have an issue with saying it. I know Salvador Villa from Mario Party Wars has no problem, putting that out there. And because remember, I'm from the old school days where being called a nerd and a geek was like really just like a slap in the face. And now everybody seems to be embracing the nerd and geek culture.
Everybody wants to be a nerd or a geek, and like even people who are not are trying to steal our subculture from us. So this is a problem, Pretty much.
But
yeah, man. So I got that, and we're gonna record a new What About This Saturday, God willing. We have a new Topic Apocalypse that just got recorded, and there's gonna be a new Super BS on Mondays. The wheels are always turning, man. Always turning.
But you also had an interview, I think Brian did, on the Super BS Gamescast. Is that correct?
Yeah, he interviewed a couple of guys from Two Raven Studios, and they create a game called Wild Heart, and it's actually I don't know if you got a chance to look at it. It's free. It's pay what you think it's worth, but it's a really cool looking game. It's I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of the game plays in the style of like Final Fantasy Tactics, but you play as wood creatures in the woods. So it's a pretty neat concept made by these guys who were actually made this game as a part of a college course. So you can check out the interview. It's up on podcast.com and iTunes. It's under the Super BS podcast. So definitely check that out. Those guys are really cool.
And also as well, you've got the continuing playthrough from Hellblade to Suna's Sacrifice. And I know the review's coming up very, very soon. In fact, we'll actually be talking about it in detail on the Monday episode. So definitely look forward to that. And so much more. I know Conan Exiles, Fortnite. I know that's also on the docket for you as well. So definitely a lot there for you. And if you want to check out everything that's going on, check it out at Humannequin Media on Facebook and Twitter. So we've got a great show for you today. Our fantasy football guru, Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast, will stop by later in the program. Also as well, our good friend, Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing will also be showing up as well, talking about WWE SummerSlam. He's going to break it down with me also later in the episode. I'm also going to play a couple clips from the latest Humannequin Media podcast, and we're also going to have a great song from Plazma Z as well. But first up, Josh, we have got to talk about the big news that came across today. It's something that we've been speculating on for quite a while, but it wasn't a 100% sure thing. But it looks like it's been confirmed by the Hollywood Reporter today, so I want to give them the props. It is the latest project underway for Lucasfilm, and that is a new Obi-Wan story. So I ask you, Josh, when you heard the news that it is a 100% confirmation, not confirmed yet if Ian McGregor, who has played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequel movies, is going to be a done deal, that we're not sure yet. He has said he wanted to play, but I ask you, what are your thoughts on an Obi-Wan film and where you think it will take the Star Wars universe to that next level?
I'm kind of on the fence about it. I like Obi-Wan as a character, but I want to know where it takes place on the timeline before I make any judgments or anything on it. Because I honestly, I don't really care to know anything about a younger Obi-Wan. I maybe would want to know what he was doing in between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. But at the same time, I feel like if there is a story to tell, it would have been mentioned at some point in the older Star Wars movies. So I guess it depends on what it is and what it entails, where it's at. I like the idea of it, but this is what we were talking about before. Are we reaching for characters that don't really need to have expanded stories told because we know enough about them?
Are you also referring to the Han Solo story as well?
Well, I'm kind of looking forward to the Han Solo because they don't tell much about his backstory. But whereas with because he wasn't in the prequel trilogies, whereas with Obi-Wan, we kind of watched him grow up and mature and become the Jedi Master that would eventually help Luke out in A New Hope. But with Han Solo, we don't know much about his backstory besides the fact that he just appears in A New Hope. And I'm more referring to like the idea of like maybe having a Yoda film or a honestly, I don't really care about Boba Fett that much. So it's just one of those things. Like, so we have Obi-Wan, and where exactly does he take place? What's going on? Because I feel like if there's a significant tale to be told about him, we would have already like had whispers of it, you know?
Well, I think maybe there is a few stories to tell. I know there's been some books written about that time between the last of the prequels, Revenge of the Sith, and A New Hope. There is quite a gap there, obviously, from the end of Ian McGregor's time and then the start of Sir Alec Guinness's time. So there could be something that takes place within those years that could be exciting enough for fans of the Star Wars universe to actually embrace and actually want to see when it hits theaters. In fact, I think there might be even a little bit more of that because, like I said, there's so many years in between the aging process, obviously, as Obi-Wan got older into, Sir Alec Guinness's age and whatnot. I want to know exactly what he was doing. Was there any secret missions or anything that he was dealing with Yoda or doing to try and salvage the Jedi Empire during that time frame? So it's definitely, to me, a little bit more interesting than what you have come across as saying. But I can understand your trepidation in not wanting to see this or not having the desire to see an Obi-Wan movie of this extent. And because he's been all over pretty much, 1 through 6, as far as, with even him appearing as a ghost later on in the 5th and 6th episodes. So that being the case, I still think there is a story to tell with Obi-Wan. And as far as in the future, I think Ian McGregor himself as an actor has embraced the role.
They don't have Ian McGregor play Obi-Wan. I think that's definitely important if they want to bring fans back into Obi-Wan stories. They need a sense of continuity, because if they don't have Ian McGregor play him, that will be 3 different actors, and that's kind of like, we start breaking into Spider-Man territory there.
What are your thoughts on the Obi-Wan film that's going to be now in production at Lucasfilm? Are you excited to hear about that news, that it's finally a done deal and it's going through that process? Or are you concerned that it's just another money grab and it's not going to turn out well? Are you excited about Ian McGregor playing the role again, or do you want somebody else to play the iconic role of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, and Humannequin Media on Facebook and Twitter as well. Well, once again, it's going to be a great episode we have for you. We've got Tyler Baker that's coming on the way right after the break, that's going to be talking about all the things fantasy football, as far as what you need to do to prepare for your draft. And then later on in the show, we've got our good friend as well, Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing, the show he does with the Kingpin, Brian Malonis. He's going to come by to break down SummerSlam and what things he's looking forward to and what things you wrestling fans should look forward to as well. Plus, also, we are going to both share our thoughts on the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. He's had health problems as late. It's been all over the news, and we're going to share our thoughts on what kind of legacy he has and what he means to this professional wrestling industry. He's going to be by later in the show to talk about that as well. So it's going to be a great episode indeed. We're looking forward to all this great stuff going on. But right now, it's another awesome song from our good friend Plazma Z. This is Level 1. And this is the PCC Multiverse.
You're listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos.
Super BS.
Presents.
Check out Brian's interview with Sam and Jimmy from Two Ravens and the developers of Wild Heart on the latest Super BS Gamescast.
But I think the aesthetic and the tactics idea was really, really, really smart, because you guys might have gotten lost in a wave of puzzle games if you would have had that approach. But I don't know what your end game was anyways.
It was kind of nice because without throwing the university lecturer under the bus, he didn't really like, one of them didn't really like Wild Heart when we pitched it to them, and the pitch was a sort of disaster. So it's kind of nice how well it's turned out after sort of being told it wasn't the right idea.
Yeah, I mean it really is a cool game and idea. I am sure that's half of your guys' attention was just because people love tactics games and people love this really cool minimal art style. I mean, your artist did some incredible work. What games inspired Wild Heart? I know you mentioned Fire Emblem. Have you guys played other tactical games that you guys really like?
I think it's not quite in the same realm, but we did very briefly look at the old Super Mario RPG.
I love that. Yeah. That's the best.
When we were first trying to put the combination of ideas together, we did briefly look at that as a way of moving through an overworld and having these battles pop up.
Oh, yeah.
That's the Super BS Gamescast, available today on all Humannequin Media outlets. And we're back here on the show. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. We thank you so much for listening, and oh my goodness, it's a great joy indeed, because it is that time of the year again. Fantasy football, it being so much part of American culture right now, and even actually around the world, is growing by leaps and bounds. I remember playing it little by little in the 90s, everybody getting together with their dollar bills and their $10 and putting together a pool and whatnot and picking the players. But fantasy football has now grown to such almost like a mega industry all of its own. And with all the drafts pretty much taking place right around now over the next few episodes that we're going to have on, who better to talk a little bit about fantasy football than our new guru of fantasy football, Tyler Baker of DKLegends.com, and also as well the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. How are you today?
I am well. I'm very well. Football season is back. Some guys are sports fans. I'm a football fan. So from February until July, I'm just in this awful, depressing slumber, and I'm waking up again. Training camp is happening. Preseason is happening. It's football season. It's fantasy football season, and I am just so excited. I'm excited to be on your program. Thank you.
Oh, well, it's great to have you on indeed, and I'll tell you what, there's so many things I want to discuss with you. First and foremost, I think what we'll talk about is let's go over some of the top players that people need to start thinking about selecting in those early rounds that they're going to have, because they're going to have their drafts coming up very soon within the next couple weeks, if not the next couple weekends as well. So who are some of the top players they should focus on for their upcoming football drafts?
Sure, sure. Well, you can find all of my rankings at dklegends.com. If you'll go to dklegends.com, go to the NFL tab, and you will see my 2017 draft kit, and that will have all of my player rankings, and I'll even have notes for all of the players. Now, when you're talking about your draft, you need to have somewhat of a strategy. And by a strategy, I don't mean you need to lock yourself into certain positions at certain rounds. You really have to go with the flow of the draft. And so you're going to need to be a little bit prepared, and the draft kit will help you do that. But I do have my top guys that I like. And for me, I like running backs. If you get a top running back, you are looking at every week production, and you're usually looking at a really good chance of getting touchdowns every week. And 6 points for a touchdown is huge in fantasy football. My number one running back is David Johnson. I have him above Le'Veon Bell. I think David Johnson is more durable than Le'Veon Bell. David Johnson doesn't like to smoke the weed like Le'Veon Bell does. And David Johnson is he is that offense. He is the focal point of that offense, especially with the news coming out that John Brown, a receiver for the Cardinals, his sickle cell trait, the doctors haven't been able to get that under control. So it looks like that offense is really going to run through David Johnson.
Carson Palmer, at his advanced age, you never know what you're going to get at this point in time. I think his better days are behind him. So definitely a reliance on Johnson looks to be in order, correct?
That is correct. I think that this is the last hurrah for the Cardinals, and I don't think it's going to be a great one. This is probably going to be the last year Larry Fitzgerald plays. Hate to see him leave. Such a great player. This could be Carson Palmer's last year. This could be Bruce Arians' last year. You know, he battled cancer last year, and he didn't tell anybody. And he coached through it. That's just a tough kind of guy that he is. But I think the Cardinals, it's one of those teams I love watching. There's so many guys on that team that I really like. But unfortunately, things don't really look good for them this year. But if there is a bright spot, and if they need a spark every week, David Johnson is that guy.
Definitely an excellent choice indeed. And I agree with you a little bit about Le'Veon Bell, because he has not shown to be able to play an entire season for whatever reason, whether injury or otherwise. So
I think if you're looking at week-to-week upside, Le'Veon Bell has higher upside week-to-week. He is just a phenomenal player, phenomenal athlete. He plays on a better offense than David Johnson does. But you're right, there's always something, whether it's an injury, whether it's a suspension, whether it's Big Ben missing a couple games because of injury. That's going to change the dynamic of that offense. And I don't think it's necessarily in Le'Veon Bell's favor when that does happen.
Plus, their offense is so prolific, it could take away from him on a personal level unless he gets a lot of pass receptions as well. So who else are you targeting? Because I know you said running backs, which it's funny because how that is evolved as far as, in the past, running backs were the main source of everybody needed to get running backs. Then it kind of evolved into quarterbacks, and in the past few years, because the trend as far as passing has gone so far up from previous years, wide receivers have become a valued commodity as far as a top flight receiver. So you're still sticking with running backs if you're in those early rounds, or were you looking somewhere else as well?
Yes, and the reason is you are going to want advantages at your positions over your opponent. Meaning if you have great running backs and your opponent does not, at those positions, you're going to have an advantage. Now, yes, there are top tier wide receivers and middle tier and lower tier, but there's not as much of a fall off from a top tier receiver to a middle tier receiver. In the NFL, there are only a certain number, a very finite number of what you would call a workhorse running back, a guy that is out there on every play. A lot of teams from the running back position require a lot of different things. So what a lot of teams will do, they'll have kind of a bigger running back that'll be their short yardage guy, and he'll be the short yardage guy. So when they get around, when it's 3rd and 2 and they need 2 yards, they'll put in the big guy, or where they're down on the goal line, they need a touchdown from a couple yards out, they'll put in the big guy. But then they'll also have kind of a smaller scat back type of guy that they'll have on 3rd down when they spread the offense around or spread the offense out, and so that that third down running back can go out and catch passes. There's very few teams that have a running back that does all of those things. And when you're talking about getting an advantage over your opponent, you want a guy at the running back position who does all of those things. David Johnson does all of those things. Le'Veon Bell does all of those things. LaShawn McCoy does all of those things. And all of the guys that I have in the top 2 tiers of my rankings, they are workhorse running backs. They're going to be on the field all the time. So when it comes to your draft, my draft strategy is going to be get running backs early, maybe try to get one of those tight ends. And I have a podcast about tight ends that your listeners can check out, and then wait on receiver. I think the receiver position is very deep. And the reason is, and you just touched on it, is that the NFL is kind of moving into a more of a passing league. So that means that there are going to be receivers in the later rounds that you can get on your team, and you don't necessarily have to get one of those top tier guys.
Oh, that's great indeed. Some real inside depth there for you from Tyler Baker of the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. Tell you what, I'm just so stoked because I know drafts are coming right and left, whether it's Yahoo, whether it's ESPN, whether it's DraftKings, what have you, even right around the office pool and whatnot. There's a lot of fantasy football drafts going around. It's great to get that insider knowledge. And if anyone out there wants to find out more about Tyler Baker's work, check out dklegends.com and also the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast, which you can find, and it is available on iTunes and also through Libsyn, that you can also find all the channels that Libsyn sends out to, including iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts. If there's any type of strategy that people should follow through the draft, I know you mentioned as far as focus on running backs first. How important is the quarterback in the modern age of fantasy football with all the PPL leagues and whatnot? Because from back when and even towards the past few years when I've drafted, I know certain quarterbacks always seem to go first. So what are some of the trends that people should follow, and what key strategies maybe do you have the best advice for?
You're right. In earlier days, everybody got a quarterback first. And the reason is the quarterback is going to be the position that scores the most points on your team. But guys and girls began to realize that the number 1 quarterback and the number 5 quarterback, there wasn't that much of a difference. Whereas the number 1 running back and the number 5 running back, there was a big difference. So what you see now in fantasy football is you see quarterbacks begin to come off the board in about the 3rd round. And if you're in kind of an expert league, they'll start coming off at about the 5th round. And the reason is that you want to gain any advantage you can. And the advantage that a early draft pick quarterback is going to give you over an opponent that has a middle draft pick quarterback. Fantasy football is about value. It's you're using your draft picks. You're trying to get as much value as you can. And there's just not a lot of value in passing up on one of the elite skill positions at running back, at wide receiver. Those elite guys are the only guys that are going to give you that elite production. I've, in my draft kit, isolated a couple quarterbacks that I think you can get late that are going to have really good production. One of those guys is Kirk Cousins. Now, I know that there's been a lot of changes in that offense, and normally that would be a little concerning, but the changes that they've made, I think, are actually going to play into Kirk Cousins' strengths, and he's playing on the 2nd year of a franchise tag. He has a lot to play for. That's a really good offense. Also, I like Phillip Rivers this year, similarly, because he has such great weapons around him, and he would have been a much better quarterback last year if the game scripts would have been a little bit better for him. Mike McCoy is gone, their head coach. They're making some changes. And both of those guys, Kirk Cousins, I think, is going in the 8th round, and I believe Phillip Rivers is going in the 10th round. So there's
Those are some good values.
Very good values. So instead of spending a 3rd or a 4th round pick, now is Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, or Drew Brees going to put up better numbers than Kirk Cousins? Yeah. But are you going to get more production on a week-to-week basis from spending that 3rd or 4th round pick on a really good running back or wide receiver? I say yes, and I say that that's the better value.
With Kirk Cousins as well, he is playing for a contract, most likely somewhere else, because he can no longer be franchised by the Washington Redskins, correct?
No, he can be franchised, but it's going to cost them, I think, $38 million.
And I don't see the owner of that particular franchise paying him that kind of money. So he probably is playing for somewhere else, and he needs to make sure he still has those stats to prove it. Otherwise, as you know, in the league, one bad season can totally turn around people's opinions as far as your future is concerned.
It is a what have you done for me lately league. And I would disagree. I think Dan Snyder's charging about $12 a hot dog, and judging on that profit margin, I'm sure he could afford to pay Kirk Cousins $38 million. But you're right. I don't think he will.
I just don't think he'll want to. Seeing his pattern as far as erratic, as far as spending is concerned. Yeah. He holds back some years. He splurges others. But that situation the past couple of years with Kirk Cousins has deteriorated.
It's been a mess.
Yeah, so I don't see him staying there for very much longer, although that could change as well. But those are some great strategies as far as who to look forward to in what rounds. Once again, it is Tyler Baker from the DKLegends.com site. You want to check out and you can download his entire draft kit, which is now available. I'm actually looking at it on the screen here. It's available at DKLegends.com, correct?
I do the top 50-ish running backs, wide receivers, top 30 quarterbacks, and about the top 25 tight ends. So all of the top players are covered, and there are player notes on just about all of those guys. Now that will be updated constantly.
Anything else you want to tell people exactly where they can get all your great information and also the great updates, and basically how much are you planning to update during the course of the next few weeks and also the season as well?
You know, I have for years loved helping. For one, I love helping people. It's just, I love it. I love helping people. Well, I've been helping people with fantasy football for years. And this past year, I've worked for the best fantasy site in the world. And working with these professionals has really helped me learn the ins and outs of it. So with my podcast, the entire premise of my podcast, I want it to be nice, quick, and concise, and I want you to have all of the information you need to make good decisions throughout the year. Because what I've learned is you will not win or lose your league in the draft. You will lose or win your league according to how you manage your team. And that means paying attention to the waiver wire every week. That means making good trades or not making trades. It means setting your lineup to be the most efficient that it can be every single week. I think everybody in life is just looking for ways to connect, and fantasy football is a great way to connect with your coworkers, with friends, with your family. So if you're having a little trouble getting started, just let me know. I'm here to help.
Well, that's awesome indeed. And definitely if you are in the realm of whether you're someone who knows fantasy football, has played many years, or even someone who's just started, definitely the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast and Tyler Baker's articles on DKLegends.com is definitely the place you need to go to for all the latest information on fantasy football. Tyler, it's been great having you on today's show. We truly appreciate you being part of the PCC Multiverse.
Thank you very much. And in the future, remember, you got a guy. You got a fantasy football guy now.
Awesome. That's our fantasy football guru. It is Tyler Baker from DKLegends.com and also the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. And we thank him so much for being now a part of the pop culture cosmos.
You got to ask yourself one question, punk.
What the hell is a cigar nerd?
Welcome to the Cigar Nerds Podcast.
It's the only show where two guys smoke cigars and talk about nerd culture.
Do you like movies, games, comics, sci-fi, pulp culture, and beer?
Do you like science, nerd news, explosions for no apparent reason?
Then this is the show for you.
It's like being in a nerdy cigar shop, but for your ears.
Check us out at cigarnerdpodcast.com.
And we're back with the PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. Before we go into Crackdown 3 and all the issues there, let me just make sure everybody knows out there on Monday night, it is the #1 show 6 months in a row on the Podcast Radio Network. It is the Pop Culture Cosmos Show. It's available at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific on the Podcast Radio Network. It's also available on iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Ace Podcast Network, Overcast.fm, Player.fm, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Podcast.com, Mixcloud, the ESO Network, the Tangible Network, the Gonna Geek Network, Cast Crunch, Social Podcasts, and our home site, popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. Also as well on Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. It's one of the fastest rising shows on the Podcast Radio Network. It's Attack of the Humannequins. There's a lot of exclusive content specifically for that show, so you got to check it out. Attack of the Humannequins on the Podcast Radio Network, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. So check that out as well. Josh, I'll tell you what, this is something I guess a lot of people in the industry kind of foresaw this and kind of saw this coming. That was the delay by Microsoft for Crackdown 3, which has been in development for a little while now. It was going to be releasing side by side with the launch of the Xbox One X, but unfortunately, it has been delayed to 2018 with no specific time frame mentioned, just 2018. But I ask you, Josh, what do you think is going on with Microsoft when they delayed Crackdown 3?
I was actually wondering the same thing, because obviously it exists because we got to see it firsthand at E3. We got to watch people play it. But from what I understand, a lot of like early reviewers and testers have been saying that it's really kind of janky gameplay. It's kind of shaky. It's not solid. It's really glitchy, I guess. And I'm wondering, my speculation is that it has a, not only are they trying to iron the kinks out, but they're trying to, I think their development cycle took a little bit longer because the Xbox One X is coming out and they're trying to meet the specs of that console, if I had to guess.
And hearing that it is possibly had some issues from a technical standpoint is not surprising. Like I said, you and I were at E3 and we got to see glimpses of it, and maybe it's not refined enough at this point to be something that Microsoft wants to showcase off with the Xbox One X. But that leads to a bigger question. What really is going to be the go-to game to get for the Xbox One X when it gets released? Because there's no game being shipped alongside with it. The closest would be the new Middle-earth Shadows of War. That would be the closest thing to it. And then maybe you could say the new Forza that's going to come out. But that comes out before the actual system comes out. So does Microsoft now have an issue if there's no game that's going to be released side by side with the actual launch of the Xbox One X?
See, I don't know, because I know a lot of people, the excitement revolving around the Xbox One X is being able to play a lot of games they already have in native 4K, but it's there aren't any launch titles. You're right, so that's definitely interesting. But the thing is, like, I want to see how many people actually go out and buy this at first, because 4K tech, as far as like TVs go, like, it's relatively new and not a lot of people have it. So you know how it took a long time for people to get Blu-ray and kind of catch up with all that? I think that's going to be a definite speed bump for this new Xbox as far as that goes. But we'll just have to wait and see. I know eventually they will get there, but by this time, who's to say that like PlayStation or even the Nintendo Switch won't catch up to what is going on in the current technology cycle.
What are your thoughts on Crackdown 3's delay and also the Xbox One X coming out later this year? Share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Humannequin Media, Game Source, and Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook and Twitter as well. When we come back, after playing another great Humannequin Media clip from one of their podcasts, we're going to come back with our good friend. It is Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. He's going to break down SummerSlam with me right here on the PCC Multiverse. Check out the show that's all things nerdy, as Guardians of the Geek is now on the air.
And I mean, you go back to like the original Batman in the '60s, which was great, but like it was a different type. You know what I mean? It's like it's a single episode. It's just like a madcap. It's just a fun romp. And then you have the Netflix ones that are a little bit different. So I've enjoyed them.
I'm curious what capacity he's going to be in it, though. I mean, if he's going to be it for the whole run, is he just like this kind of flashback, like dark figure for Jessica Jones? Like, I'm curious what capacity.
Yeah, because it does say here. I'm just reading it, and we were talking about this right before we started recording that. She did kill him at the end.
Yeah.
So I wonder what will happen if it'll be in flashbacks, or if it'll be, if as it is with all comic books, he's not dead because they're never dead.
That's Guardians of the Geek, available today on all Humannequin Media outlets. And we're back with the show. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. And, well, it's that time of the year for the WWE. It is one of their biggest and always one of their best shows of the year. It's SummerSlam, and this year is SummerSlam 2017. It's got a great card lined up. And who better to talk about professional wrestling than, well, a man who actually recently returned to the ring to deal out some justice to some other individuals who might not have been very fair in the ring themselves. He is a great and outstanding returning guest to us. It's Mike Crockett of the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. And if you have not heard it yet, you have got to hear it as soon as this show ends. How are you, my friend?
Very good, Gerald. Thank you very much for having me back. It's great to be here as always.
Oh, thank you as well. And you know, that troublemaker I was talking about, that if you don't know Mike Crockett's background, he was a referee on the independent scene and actually returned to the ring to handle a certain troublemaker that I think I know as well, if you want to go ahead and elaborate a little bit more.
Yes, this guy, I've had issues with them for many years, in various different forms and fashions. It is my co-host on the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing, the Kingpin, Brian Malonis. He's been with you, with both of us, of course, a couple times here on Pop Culture Cosmos and the PCC Multiverse. But he's been getting out of line in the podcast, and he's been getting out of line in the ring. So I figure, why not go back in the ring and just make sure that everything is on the straight and narrow with this guy. And he did all right for the most part, but, you know, he still tried to get his jabs in. But, you know, I'm the authority in there. I'm the referee. So what I say goes.
Oh, that's awesome. As long as he didn't try to hit you with a chair.
He did not. Not this time, anyway. Not this time.
Before I want to get into SummerSlam 2017, unfortunately, some real tragic news has hit the professional wrestling industry in recent days, and that is the continuing health issues for what I would call the quintessential wrestler. And probably if you were to take a Wikipedia or an encyclopedia and just turn to the page and what is the description of a professional wrestler, my definition would have a picture of Ric Flair. Appreciate and respect his work tremendously as one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest. You know, obviously, that's always up for debate. But Mike, I want to know what kind of influence does, you know, obviously someone that's even closer to the ring than I am. What does Ric Flair's legacy mean to the entire industry as a whole, in your opinion?
You know, back in the 1980s, Gerald, it was Hogan or Flair. That was you look at the wrestling magazines, you go to the newsstands, you see the magazines. It was always the dream match was Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. Those are the two big names. Of course, Hogan was up north in the WWF, and Flair was down south for the NWA. So, I mean, they were basically neck and neck for, you know, who was the most influential guy in wrestling at that time. And he's just continued. He's had a long career. Of course, he retired at WrestleMania a bunch of years back against Shawn Michaels, but he is a quintessential professional wrestler. And just the stuff that we've been hearing the past week now has been really tough to hear. It started with, it was a routine, and then it became, he had heart issues, and at one point there was a surgery, and he came out of the surgery, I believe it was Monday, and he came out of the surgery and he was resting. But I mean, we're hearing tonight, and this is airing on Friday, but this is a couple of days prior to that. We're hearing, the latest I'm hearing, he's still in critical condition. He's not out of the woods yet. And just the outpouring of affection you see online, on Twitter and stuff like that. I mean, if you want to know, Gerald, what people think where Ric Flair stands in the pro wrestling world, just go to the biggest names in professional wrestling. Everyone on Twitter just giving their well wishes and their prayers and thoughts with Ric Flair at this time because, yeah, he is one of the most influential professional wrestlers of all time. And, I mean, hopefully he pulls through this thing. I mean, it just still sounds like a dire situation, and that's terrible to hear. And hopefully he comes out of this and we can see him strutting around again.
I hope so as well. He was at one time put in a medically induced coma, and anytime that happens, that's some really scary stuff. He's got so much support from around the world. I like you, have seen the outpouring of well wishes worldwide from social media all over the world, and just it's so great to see that someone is so appreciated and beloved and has entertained so many fans over the years, and you know, at this point in time is trying to give something back to him to help him get back as far as the recovery is concerned. So definitely our thoughts are with him. Truly one of the greatest we'll say it, the sport will ever see. As the old saying goes, the show must continue and the show must go on. And with that, there is SummerSlam coming up this weekend on the WWE Network. And I'll tell you what, like I said, it's shaping up as a very, very promising show. Whether or not it comes off in execution, we'll have to wait and see. You've heard the lineup. Mike, what stands out to you the most as being the match to watch this coming Sunday?
Well, first of all, AJ Styles versus Kevin Owens, and that's one of the matches that I'm looking forward to. Hopefully they get some time, and you look at the lineup. I see the lineup I'm seeing here as 12 matches on it, but at the same point, this show is going to be 4 hours long. It's starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, not 8 p.m., and plus there is a 2-hour pre-show. So strap in, sit down, get your drinks and beverages, your popcorn. It's going to be a long night.
I'll say this, Mike. Though for those calling for a smaller time period after WrestleMania, I don't think WWE has really learned its lesson in that regards. But then again, they need to fill programming for the network, correct?
Yes, yeah. They think more is better, and so I mean it's still the same $9.99 a month. So what can you say about that, really? But AJ Styles versus Kevin Owens. That's one of the. Back to your question, that's one of the ones that I'm looking forward to. The Jinder Mahal Shinsuke Nakamura match, it's very interesting because the Jinder Mahal experiment here has
it's fallen flat here domestically, correct?
Yeah. In my eyes, as you're kind of alluding to, the rumor is that basically he was put in this position because WWE is looking to grow their audience in India. And so they strapped the rocket, as they say, to Jinder Mahal. And he came over from Raw, where he was basically a mid-card talent. He didn't really win many matches at all. And
I think you're being generous in that statement.
And he goes to SmackDown, and he's almost immediately in title contention and wins the championship. It's kind of the whole Raw versus SmackDown thing. I know we talked about this before, Gerald, with the brand split. Jinder Mahal is a mid-card guy in Raw. They move him to SmackDown, and he's a champion. It just, to me, it makes it seem like it's a secondary brand. SmackDown is number 2. It's the B show essentially. But I mean, Jinder Mahal, they've done everything they can, but I can't say for sure they're going to bail out on him here and give Nakamura the championship. But I would say it's probably leaning in that direction at this stage.
I'd have to agree with you on that, with only one caveat. Shinsuke Nakamura does not have, I guess, maybe the backing and the je ne sais quoi, so to speak, that he once had coming out of NXT, where he was just over, I guess the vernacular, if you want to say that, was just tremendous. He's not been given the same kind of attention coming to the WWE roster on SmackDown. I'm hoping this will give him new life, because I think he is just an extremely talented individual. And at one time, he was considered one of the top 5 wrestlers in the world.
Yeah, he has been a little cooler than when he first came in. I think part of that is because he was in NXT for a really long time. And he's a guy who main evented in Japan, main evented the Tokyo Dome. And he was, as you said, a top guy, one of the top guys in the world. And they brought him over to the US, to WWE, and they put him in NXT, where he's working in front of, 200, 300, 400 people. And the first night in, he had a match with Sami Zayn at a TakeOver show. And it was a tremendous match, the match of the year in my eyes that year. So the fact that he did that his first night and then he remained there for a year was, I think, it took some of the starch out of him. He wasn't special anymore by the time they were done with him in NXT, and then they brought him up, and yeah, he hasn't gotten that spark back yet. But hopefully, if they give him the title here and they get behind him in a big way, then he can get back to where he was. But it's there's a little bit of repair work that has to be done for Nakamura, and I think giving him the title here will help with that.
Yes, definitely some sound analysis indeed. Once again, it's Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. But I want to ask real quickly two things. We'll start off with this. A match that could surprise people that maybe not too many people are looking at on the card and are saying that's a match that they want to see.
I'll say the Raw Tag Team Championship match, Cesaro and Sheamus versus Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins. If you watched Raw this past Monday, Ambrose and Rollins, they were formerly a part of The Shield with Roman Reigns, and that team was one of the most over acts. I would say 3 guys that were coming up from NXT, 3 guys that they really treated the best when it came to storylines, when they kept them strong the entire time. The crowd was behind them completely, and then they broke them up. Seth Rollins ended up turning heel, but now Seth Rollins is back as a good guy, and him and Dean Ambrose finally came together this past Monday, and the crowd, it was right here in Boston, Gerald, where Raw was this past Monday, and the crowd went absolutely bananas when they finally put their fists together in the old Shield pose. And I think down the line we're going to see Roman Reigns, and we're going to do the Shield reunion, and I think it's going to be big money down the road, and I think Roman Reigns may need that at this point, because he gets a lot of negative attention from a lot of the fans at this point. I think him going back to the Shield will be a good thing, but for now it's Ambrose and Rollins, Cesaro and Sheamus, and just with the way the fans have rallied behind Ambrose and Rollins, I think that one will get the crowd pretty excited, and hopefully maybe we'll see Ambrose and Rollins win the tag team championships, which I think would be a nice thing.
And I do see a Shield reunion in the future as well. And like you said, Roman Reigns, after the past couple of years he has definitely going to need that as far as because of the rough couple of years he's had with fan response. And speaking of Roman Reigns, he is firmly entrenched in the main event, and that is a 4-way with Braun Strowman, Samoa Joe, and also as well Brock Lesnar. Your thoughts on how the match is going to go down, and your thoughts on who ultimately will become the WWE Raw World Champion.
Well, this match, there were a lot of rumors going in of what the main event was going to be. What was the WWE Universal Championship match going to be at SummerSlam? At one point, it was Brock and Braun Strowman was the rumor. At one point, they talked about going to Brock and Roman Reigns in the main event. I mean, that has been rumored to be the main event of next year's WrestleMania in New Orleans. But as far as the competitors involved, Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar had a great match at the last pay-per-view. It's good to see that he is still in the mix. Braun Strowman this past year has been kind of a revelation. He came up to WWE having never really been on NXT television as a wrestler. He had done some spots. He was a part of Adam Rose's Rosebuds. I mean, that's where he got his the majority of his face time. But he came up there with very little experience. He came up to WWE because I think Vince McMahon loves big, strong guys. So Braun Strowman was up there, and he didn't belong there at first, but he has worked very hard, and he is an entertaining part of the show. He's kind of earned their respect, I would say, at this point. And Braun Strowman could be the guy to take out Brock Lesnar. I don't know if it's going to be here. You mentioned off the top Brock Lesnar going back to the UFC. I'm not sure I see that happening. They talked about how he re-entered himself into
the USADA drug pool. Yeah,
but there's still some sort of grace period for Brock to be able to go back to UFC, and I don't think that's happening just yet. He is under contract till WrestleMania. I think he's going to see that contract through. So I think he may retain here, Brock Lesnar, but Braun Strowman probably has the best shot out of the three of them, out of Braun, Samoa Joe, and Roman Reigns, of taking the championship, if anyone was to take the championship this Sunday at SummerSlam.
I agree with you because I think Braun Strowman still, even with his injury, has come back and actually still very strong in the fans' eyes. And if anybody is going to take the title, it could possibly be that. And it may be due to someone else getting the loss, and somehow Brock Lesnar is maybe just shaded out of the title picture, so to speak. Right. So it gives him impetus to go ahead and go be the challenger once again. He does have to wait, I believe, a year because of the USADA drug testing rules, because of what he did last time in his last MMA bout where he failed a drug test. But I know there is heavy interest for him and a John Jones fight somewhere in the future. So if that's the case, definitely something to look forward to as we head towards the big night, SummerSlam, this Sunday. Just looking forward to it indeed. And well, I'll tell you what, Mike, I just truly appreciate you being on the show. And I want to make sure everyone out there knows more about the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. And who better to explain it than the man himself, the host, along with the Kingpin, Brian Malonis. It's Mike Crockett, and just let everyone know out there how they can best get a hold of you guys and listen to your great show.
Of course, thanks very much, Gerald. So we do 2 podcasts a week. We do Mondays. It's on the NAI Wrestling Network. It's on their feed. And we do a podcast on Thursdays on BDA Radio. That's on the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing feed. Might be a little confusing, but all you got to do is go to any podcast app and just type in WPAN for Wrestling Podcast About Nothing. Both feeds will come up, the NAI Wrestling Network feed and the BDA Radio Wrestling Podcast About Nothing feed. You can subscribe to both and join us. And we are on Twitter at the WPAN, Facebook.com/the WPAN, Instagram, the WPAN, and of course, every Tuesday evening, we are on the Podcast Radio Network, happily with the Pop Culture Cosmos and all the great people over there at the Podcast Radio Network.
Mike, as always, it's great to talk to you. I hope to get you and Brian on the show again at a point in the future, which is good for you guys. It's just always great to have you on the show. And once again, all my best to you and Brian on the future with the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing.
You too, Gerald. You're killing it over there. The Multiverse and the Pop Culture Cosmos, doing it all.
We're trying indeed. We're just trying to follow in your great footsteps. And we truly appreciate it. And once again, want to thank you, Mike, for being part of the PCC Multiverse.
Thanks, Gerald.
For the latest reviews and opinions on everything pop culture, head on over to our brand new site, www.popculturecosmos.wordpress.com. And we're back with PCC Multiverse. My name is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being here and listening in on the show. I'll tell you what, it's been another great episode indeed. I want to thank Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast, and also as well Mike Crockett from the Wrestling Podcast About Nothing for joining me on the show. So Josh, I know it's been the talk of the actual movie industry this past few days before the Obi-Wan film confirmation came up, and that was the operation which is called Movie Pass. They recently made a reduction in price. Basically for $10 a month, you can go see one movie each day for the entire month. So what are your thoughts on Movie Pass, the $10 a month scenario? And do you think actually it's going to be something that's going to last and something that's going to be accepted by theaters around the country?
It's one of those adapt or die situations because, as we discussed before, theaters are charging so much money that people aren't going to see movies anymore. And this is directly affecting box office numbers.
It certainly is this month, that's for sure.
Right. And so with this new Movie Pass, it was an inevitability. Like, as far as that goes, they're going to have to find new ways of enticing people to movie theaters to spend that extra $3 or $4 on popcorn or whatever. I think this will help curb that problem, and it'll also help rejuvenate an interest in going to the movies. I think that movie theaters are going to have to start banking on making money off concessions. I think that's why they're doing like the beer and the recliners and whatnot. So I think that this might be like the formula for the future going forward.
I personally like it, and I'm personally very interested in the possibility of getting it. I'm just worried that 2, 3, 4, or 5 months down the road, that will be discontinued via either legal action or just a lack of support funding. If you've got an opinion on the Movie Pass, share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Do you think it's a great deal? Do you think it's too good to be true? Do you think there's going to be too many theater chains, just like AMC, putting up too many roadblocks? Let us know your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Also as well, Pop Culture Cosmos, Humannequin Media, and Game Source on Facebook and Twitter as well. So for Josh Pederson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day right here in the PCC Multiverse. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network, your station for all things geek, classic, current, and beyond. Be part of the crew at ESONetwork.com.
Tangent Bound Network. Let your voice be heard. TangentBoundNetwork.com.
Thanks so much for downloading the Pop Culture Cosmos. As a special treat, we're adding a bonus episode, which starts right now. So sit back and relax as you enjoy more awesome goodness from the Pop Culture Cosmos family, and stay tuned as more great podcasts are on the way. Thanks again for listening to us here at the Pop Culture Cosmos.
Everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Guardians of the Geek. I'm Keith.
I'm Cameron.
And I'm Brandon.
This is the podcast where we talk about comic books, movies, all things geek and nerd. So our first episode, we're getting into a couple news items up the front. Then we're going to get into our segment called Off the Page, where we talk about adaptations of comic books to film, TV and movie, doesn't matter what kind of film. And then at the end, we do a top 5 segment. So we're really excited about this podcast. You guys want to add anything?
Literally so happy to be here. We're waiting for this for a long time.
It's a long time coming. It's going to be great.
All right, ringing endorsements from both of you. All right, welcome to the episode. I hope you guys enjoy.
If you're tired of sifting through flea markets for rare and unique games, we can help. Retro City Games in Henderson, Nevada, only 5 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, has all your favorite gaming staples, classics, and a wide selection of rare games with new stuff always appearing on our shelves. Come in and chat with Nicole or Doug about your love of games and watch as they help you complete your collection or find your childhood favorite. And don't forget, Retro City Games loves trade-ins. So if you have any Nintendo Super...
Everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Guardians of the Geek. I'm Keith.
I'm Cameron.
And I'm Brandon.
This is the podcast where we talk about comic books, movies, all things geek and nerd. So our first episode, we're getting into a couple news items up the front. Then we're going to get into our segment called Off the Page, where we talk about adaptations of comic books to film, TV and movie, doesn't matter what kind of film. And then at the end, we do a top 5 segment. So we're really excited about this podcast. You guys want to add anything?
Literally so happy to be here. We're waiting for this for a long time.
It's a long time coming. It's going to be great.
All right, ringing endorsements from both of you. All right, welcome to the episode. I hope you guys enjoy.
If you're tired of sifting through flea markets for rare and unique games, we can help. Retro City Games in Henderson, Nevada, only 5 minutes from the Las Vegas Strip, has all your favorite gaming staples, classics, and a wide selection of rare games with new stuff always appearing on our shelves. Come in and chat with Nicole or Doug about your love of games and watch as they help you complete your collection or find your childhood favorite. And don't forget, Retro City Games loves trade-ins. So if you have any Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega, Xbox, PlayStation, or even PC games, come in and visit Retro City Games today. Welcome to the new metropolis of gaming, Retro City Games.
I'm ready.
Cool. Okay, we're recording whenever you guys. Sweet. All right, well, guys, let's get started with some news, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sounds good.
We had some more details released on the new Green Lantern Earth 1. Cam, are you pretty excited about this?
Yeah, just found out like 5 minutes ago this is happening. I'm definitely really excited because what they've done with the Earth 1 universe like so far has been really awesome. Again, one of my favorites that I'm really excited for Volume 3 to come out is Jeff Johns and Gary Frank's Batman Earth 1. That honestly book is so good. And even one of my favorite panels is with Killer Croc on the Batman run. Super good. And 2 years ago, they announced Wonder Woman Earth 1 by Grant Morrison. I haven't read it, but I can definitely vouch for it. I've heard it is so good. And especially with all the Wonder Woman news that's been coming up, it's an even bigger deal now. So the fact they got Green Lantern on this is awesome.
Yeah. We got some more news from boundingtoncomics.com, boundingintocomics.com. The graphic novels in the DC Comics Earth 1 line, Green Lantern Earth 1, is going to be written by Karina Becco and Gabriel Hardman. They said the book will see Hal Jordan revamped as a scientist and astronaut who finds a power ring and sets off to restore the Green Lantern Corps, which were long ago extinguished by the Manhunters. Sounds pretty cool.
Dang, that almost has like a Fantastic Four kind of vibe to it.
A little bit, huh?
Yeah, it's like Journey into Space. Like, yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because you see, especially this is on the movie side, you see the success of things like Guardians of the Galaxy. You wonder if DC's trying to push more of that kind of space travel stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
To try to tap into that. But, I mean, again, one of the criticisms of the DC side is it's often darker. So I wonder if they're going to add some levity to that. Who knows?
And honestly, it's always a big, hard sell on the Cosmic E books. I think that's why Doctor Strange was such kind of a surprise success. And that's kind of where Fantastic Four, the Josh Trank version, kind of fell short, is because they pushed too hard on interdimensional kind of stuff. And so it's really...
And the third act was awful.
Like I was looking at one of my favorite podcasts, and they said they walked out, and I was like, "Oh my god!"
Well, Brandon and I saw it together, and we kind of looked over at each other as soon as, like, it seemed like it was ending. We just kind of looked at each other like, "That's it."
I was like,
that was
yeah.
Like Miles Teller, I'm a huge fan of too.
I know,
so I'm
me too.
really like,
and Michael B. Jordan,
and Kate, cast was on point, and
yeah,
sad.
That happened. Yeah.
R.I.P.
Uh-huh. For people that
that
don't
wait,
know,
one quick. That was actually Bleeding Cool, not Bounding into Comics.
Oh, got it. Sorry.
We just want to make sure we attribute it right.
Source.
So Bleeding Cool was the source for the
Corrections
Green Lantern
and
stuff.
But for people that don't know, what's the premise of Earth 1 storylines?
Very similar to the Ultimate Marvel Universe. It's a revamp, a more modern take, and they changed several aspects of the characters. And they're not fundamental aspects, but you find them to be bigger, more interesting storytelling points. Like from the Batman one, it starts off, and one of the biggest points that Jeff Johns and Gary Frank make is that his cowl, it's his eyes are wider. And they show his eyes so you can see more emotion, which is really interesting because usually with Batman you just get the white triangles, and they really go out of their way not to do that. Another example is this is where the first time I think you see Alfred not as the butler, he was a personal security guard for the Waynes, and that's the man who ends up raising Bruce. And so he's way more of a brute, which is pretty interesting. You see a lot more interesting storytellings. Killer Croc, in one of his moments, becomes he's literally an urban myth who's afraid of Batman. He's like, I just want people to leave me alone. Like I'm doing my own thing. And so there's also a great panel where Commissioner Gordon, like Batman's terrible at his job, unlike the Frank Miller Year One Batman, where he's just in the midst of it and has it all figured out. Batman's stumbling, and there's a great panel where Commissioner Gordon says, you're stepping on evidence. and then Batman's like, sorry. And then Commissioner Gordon says, you're not much of a detective, are you? And so...
Wait, so you said it doesn't change a fundamental aspect, but isn't one of the original fundamental aspects is he's the greatest detective in the world?
Yeah.
Well, I said it doesn't change like super fundamental. Like Alfred being the butler then to a bodyguard makes sense. But then you find out later that they do become more fundamental because you're right. Batman way more along the lines like stumbles upon his cases than he does like research and detect them.
So he's less of a Sherlock Holmes type in this one.
Yeah,
he'll become a better detective, but he's not starting out that way.
It's a journey. Yeah, it's really good. And then Wonder Woman, I honestly couldn't even tell you the Grant Morrison changes, but Grant Morrison is wild. So
well, the other thing I'm noticing here on the article for the Green Lantern Earth one is that it seems like there's going to be a little bit more interaction with the Manhunters. So I wonder if Martian Manhunter will become a bigger
Manhunters are a little different
Okay.
than Martian Manhunter. He's from Mars, but as far as I can recall, because I haven't read the Jeff Johns run, and his run on Green Lantern really sealed him as one of the best writers DC has. The Manhunters are they have white faces and red bodies. They're kind of weird looking, and I really have not read too much Green Lantern.
Okay. So Martian Manhunters. Sorry for all of you who are screaming into your phone or whatever. Brandon and I are less well versed on comics than Cameron.
We're not human encyclopedias like Cameron. Yeah.
They also have girlfriends, so
wives. We actually have wives.
We have wives. Yeah.
Case in point. But if you want to talk about Green Arrow, hold your boy. Okay?
All right. Well, moving on. We had an announcement this week that David Tennant is going to appear in season 2 of Jessica Jones.
I'm actually really excited about this. I love David Tennant as an actor. His Doctor Who was amazing. And going a little on the nerdier, my area of nerdy, he was a great Hamlet. So I'm excited about this.
Yes.
And his character in the first episode of Jessica Jones, every time I was watching it and he was in the scene or in the episode, I was just I had anxiety because you knew what he would do is just so messed up.
Especially with the amazing part with that season was it was episode 4, or mid-season, where she captures him, puts him in the cage, and you really start to feel bad for him, which is a tone with a villain that I think is so unique in that show, but also in the comic book culture, where it's oh my gosh, she's treating this dude like an animal.
Right.
And it is in response to how obviously everything they went through, but it was just that's how well he did, and that's how well he sold the character.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. It's been a while since I've watched it, but they did some backstory on him that I felt humanized him a little bit more until the end of the twist, where I don't know. It's really tough to get a read on his character because he can manipulate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You do feel sympathy, but then did he just make all that up?
100%.
So I'm excied about that.
And I'm really not even well versed on the Purple Man, who is just who he was.
Right.
So.
I'm not either. This is the one. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but the whole Defenders run where we're leading up to it, have been great. But this is the one that was I thought it was just excellent. Jessica Jones, because of its, it didn't fall into the traditional superhero trope a lot of the ways. It, obviously dealt with some pretty tough issues, but it was written like a real TV show. You know what I mean? That's what I've liked about the Netflix series, is that they're written more as real TV shows, less as each episode. And I mean, you go back to the original Batman in the 60s, which was great, but it was a different type. You know what I mean? It's it's a single episode. It's just a madcap. It's just a fun romp. And then you have the Netflix ones that are a little bit different. So I've enjoyed them.
I'm curious what capacity he's going to be in it, though. I mean, if he's going to be it for the whole run, is he just this kind of flashback, dark figure
That's
for
what I'm thinking.
Jessica Jones? I'm curious what capacity.
Yeah, because it does say here, I'm just reading it, and we were talking about this right before we started recording, that he was, she did kill him at the end.
Yeah.
So I wonder what will happen, if it'll be in flashbacks, or if it'll be, as it is with all comic books, he's not dead, because they're never dead.
Yeah.
Right, honestly. Well, yes and no, because you mean with what you're saying about that show, I think is so accurate too, and the fact that it's not your normal superhero show. It's really on the more side of hard-boiled detective,
right?
And the whole Alias investigations thing. It's really cool that they've done with her. And Purple Man was actually a character who gained way more credibility as he moved on, because he was I think within the first 5 issues of Daredevil was his first appearance, and. Brian Michael Bendis, like he does with all the characters he touches, honestly, with Ultimate Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, he did that with Jessica Jones and the Purple Man. He really gave them a redeeming quality of their character, and what he's done with Purple Man and her is insane. And so it's so cool to see them using his material.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, the next tidbit is Sony gave us a release date for the Spider-Man spin-off Silver and Black. The story will star Spider-Man characters Silver Sable and Black Cat. It will be directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. Is that right? Yeah. It joins Sony's Venom, starring Tom Hardy, which will be released just 4 months earlier in October 2018. So it's like a busy quarter there for Sony.
I didn't know Tom Hardy was starting in Venom.
Oh yeah. That's like
amazing.
within the last 2 months. Oh, such a good move, but it really bums me out too because Hugh Jackman said if he could have any successor for Wolverine, it would be Tom Hardy. But,
that actually would have made a lot of sense too.
Yeah, seriously. And so it's a win. You know what I mean? No matter what. The whole Sony thing, it gets me nervous too because I think DC had this problem, and even I think Marvel stumbled into it a couple times. They get overambitious with their titles that come out, and I mean, if the first one flops, then the second one, and luckily for DC, Wonder Woman really came through with the responses that it had to Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. Wonder Woman really just delivered in all areas it needed to. But with Sony, they've run into that problem before where they set up for Sinister Six and Amazing Spider-Man 2, and they put a lot of eggs in that basket, and it fell short, which is it just gets me nervous as a fan because my hopes get really high, and then they sell the character to Marvel Studios. But you know,
right?
I don't know much about these two characters, but what I am excited about, I mean, again, I see what you're saying with the nervousness, but what I am excited about is, with the success of Wonder Woman, that it seems that, and there's been a bigger trend in this in comic books for a few years, but it seems like we're pushing more towards like either all-female like leads and production team because it says it's going to be directed by a woman too, and so I'm excited about allowing other voices to take over 100%. Some of these Marvel movies and Marvel properties on different levels, like whether it's TV or big screen or whatever, or even in the books. I'm excited for that because it's been such a boys club for so long.
Seriously.
I mean, again, we're sitting at a table with 3 guys talking about comics, but I'm excited to see what we can get from these types of stories. And with the success of all the other TV shows, it seems like you can do more of this, even if it doesn't do as well. If it's a TV show? No, it's a film.
It's a film, yeah.
Oh, okay. It seems like maybe they should consider pushing more towards, not this, whatever about Silver and Black and Venom, but like it seems like even Sony could possibly take some of these to TV and it might succeed as well.
100%. You're seeing that with X-Men too, all over the place. With what is it, Gifted
and Legion, and Inhumans is not X-Men, but
but still, like, and I think I totally agree with you on the point where you're having new voices direct and produce these stories because you have Black Panther, which is coming up, and there's an African American director for that,
which I'm really excited about.
And in that movie, oh my gosh, so good, it looks so good. Every PS, I feel like Marvel just has a contract with Run the Jewels because in Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and now Black Panther, all of their songs have been used in the trailers, which I'm like, awesome, because I love Run the Jewels. But anyways, you're seeing a shift, and even in the writing, too, you're letting African-American writers write for African-American heroes. And you're seeing, with the exception of Brian Michael Bendis and Miles Morales, pick up that book, it's so good. But you're seeing Patty Jenkins direct Wonder Woman and all of these. You're giving the credibility and the voice to those who usually have not had it, which is super cool.
Which is funny, and we'll probably talk about this on other episodes. And Cameron, I know you and I have talked about this before in the past, but about how comics pretty quickly became a place for that, for voices to come through. And especially if you want to look at historically, especially in the sort of the reboot of the X-Men,
100%.
the second original, like the original team and then the second team, where you have people like Storm and Colossus and Wolverine and all those guys that are all like international and people of color and women and men and like all the different sort of variations you can have. So we see that, and that's comic books have become that way. And there's obviously this tension between the reading audience and the people who produce them, which again we'll get into in future episodes. But I'm excited that the sort of the Hollywood versions of these are starting to embrace that history.
And especially with I love the fact that we're getting a silver and black, a silver sable and black cat, which is we also have to pay attention to the comic book platinum age we are living in, where we never thought we'd see these characters in film at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, nobody was really asking for this, right? Like it. Aside from Cameron.
Well, no, it's not. No, I would say that these are probably not ones that people are like aware of or like, saying like, oh, we need this one. But I'm glad that the studio. I mean, again, whatever reservations we have about Sony, I'm glad that they're willing to take the risk.
Oh, for sure.
They only have so many characters that Sony themselves can pull from.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because they only have so many. They only have so many properties.
All the Spider-Man characters.
They have the Spider-Man and then the X-Men, right? No, that's Fox.
That's Fox.
That's
yeah.
Fox.
But the cool part about Sony is that was it with these characters? It's like it get now, because this is the thing too. The Guardians of the Galaxy movie that we saw. That team was created in Annihilation Conquest in 2008. Like the Groot, Rocket Raccoon, Star-Lord, Gamora team that we saw in that movie, all of those were started in 2008. And even Miles Morales, who had a callback in Spider-Man Homecoming, he started in 2008. So these are characters that we didn't even know we'd like. And now we're seeing them. And like, how many people went up to you guys or told you, oh, I knew nothing about Wonder Woman until that movie, but now I'm hearing people say, oh, she's my person. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
It's cool to see these voices being shared. And now, like, it's also letting people, audience members who have no idea about comics, into our world and why we find these characters so special.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Harley Quinn last year was the #1 Halloween costume of any, which is just like, oh my gosh.
Right. I mean, that's, again, there's certainly a broader trend in the last decade of nerd and geek culture becoming certainly more popular, where it's almost to the point where it's become the popular culture. I mean, I know it's always been pop culture, but it's now like the dominant pop culture. Comic books and even with the revival of things like Star Wars and all these other, and the Star Trek movies and all that, where we're seeing some ones that our parents back in the day, if you liked them, you were sort of on the fringe. And now it's almost the opposite, where if you don't like them, you're kind of on the fringe. Right?
Seriously.
But I mean, even the idea of the minor character, the slightly less well-known character, has been sort of the foundation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because it really launched with Iron Man. And it's not that Iron Man wasn't he was more of a second, I would say probably a second tier of the Marvel Universe. I mean, I always loved Iron Man, but even that, like, and that was obviously on the power of Robert Downey Jr.'s performance.
Oh, for sure.
But this idea that it kind of kicked off with that. So I'm glad that that's been the trend, and hopefully it continues to be the trend going forward.
100%. Because nobody was comparing, or at least I don't recall. I was in 8th grade when that first movie came out, but I never recall anyone.
I was a year out of college by the time that movie came out, so that tells you that.
But I don't ever remember hearing conversations comparing Iron Man to Batman before that movie came out. And so obviously you're totally right in all that.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for news. So let's want to move on to this week's edition of Off the Page.
Brink here from Super BS, talking about the things you know you love and the things you'd love to know. Join us weekly for a podcast about video games. Mostly. Oh, yeah.
All right, welcome back. We are going to start our segment Off the Page. Since this is our first one, we'll just give you a little bit of what we're going to be doing with this each episode. Every episode, we're going to take an upcoming or a just released, film or TV version of a comic book, and we're going to talk about how it was adapted and what we thought about its sort of the film or the TV show or whatever. So we're just going to do that each time. We're going to take one that either just came out or is coming out soon. This week we're going to start, our first one will be about The Defenders, and that's coming out this Friday. The Defenders is the Netflix sort of culmination of the 4 individual heroes, and that's Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist. So it's, if you will, it's like the Netflix version of Avengers. And that's coming out this Friday. And so I think all of us have been keeping track of those. We've been watching the Netflix shows. We've enjoyed them, but we just kind of want to talk about each one of we'll talk about the past seasons and what we are anticipating, what we're looking forward to for the upcoming series. So I think we'll start with let's each go around and just say what was of the Defenders leading up series seasons, what was our favorite superhero or what was our favorite season. We'll talk about that. We'll do it that way.
100%. Luke Cage.
Okay.
Just like
awesome.
It had something that no other superhero show movie had before.
Yeah.
It was that like soulful side of things.
It was.
Like all those scenes in the nightclub, like the music scenes that they had were just amazing.
They were.
And it set the tone for the entire episode or show. I love Luke Cage so much. Jessica Jones, close second, because that first episode in the elevator still it gave me chills. Like it was crazy.
Cameron, you go next.
Oh, sorry. My favorite was specifically Daredevil season 2. I'm a huge Batman fan, and so obviously reading Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, classic, one of the best comic book writing teams of all time. They got offered that book because of the work they'd done on Daredevil, and I knew Daredevil was going to be based on the Netflix show was going to be based on Man Without Fear, so I picked that up. Frank Miller, John Romita Jr. Book was amazing, and it's panel for panel inspired by that. Straight up the costume. That his first season costume was the Man Without Fear costume, but then also season 2 of Daredevil was probably one of my favorite runs ever because it has callbacks to Elektra and Punisher, which is the whole original run of Frank Miller's Daredevil, which is one of my favorite comic series of all time ever. So, and that means a lot to me to say. So.
Yeah. I would say, I don't know, it's a hard. So I'll say Jessica Jones because I really did enjoy Jessica Jones. I thought it was brilliantly written, brilliantly acted. As I said before, with David Tennant as Kilgrave, Mr. Purple, but also Kristen Ritter just killed it as Jessica Jones. I will say the other one that I did enjoy. So the storyline, the acting, even the cinematography, the coloring of it just made the whole season brilliant. And that end game where they're like in that, I don't know what they call it, but the essentially room with the glass and the parents come in.
Right. Yeah.
Just that whole was so tense. I was just it gave me heart palpitations the whole time through. I was just like, it's so much. I will say just a shout out to Daredevil season 1 as setting the tone for the Netflix
100%.
runs. Like if it weren't for Daredevil, if it wasn't as good as it was, which I'm not saying it's the best of all the seasons or whatever, but if it weren't as good as it was, the rest of it wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right? Daredevil set the tone for what Netflix could do with the Marvel characters. And I thought just the visceral nature of that, like even the fight scenes and even just the way that they mined sort of what would be the psychological side of all of these characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Daredevil, Matthew Murdock's sort of struggle to be a lawyer, to keep friends, like to date, like all that sort of stuff, and then it carries through the rest of them. And really that's been, I think, the common thread that I've enjoyed in the Netflix series.
Yeah, and let's just get this out there. Iron Fist didn't suck.
Yeah, for sure.
you.
No,
We're all
it
on
was
board
my
with
least.
that.
I would say it's my least favorite of the 4.
Yeah,
but it wasn't bad.
Right, it was still great. I think it got way too much flack.
Right. The reason I thought part of it was, and you can talk about this in terms of Cameron. You can talk about this in terms of like the Arrowverse on the CW.
Yeah.
But it reminded me a lot of the first initial season of Arrow with Oliver Queen coming back, and like suddenly he's a expert archer and all that. And same thing with Danny Rand, where he's just like, he comes back and he's been missing, they think he's dead and all that. And I just were some very similar plot lines.
Yeah.
I mean, they're comic books, so yeah, they're similar plot lines, but that's the only reason why I thought it's my least favorite.
He just said, save this city like 10,000 less times. In Iron Fist. Otherwise, same show.
It was more just like, get my parents' company back. Like, that's what Danny Rand was interested in.
City. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But I mean, so it was, and again, whatever the controversy of having, you know, Asian cultural appropriation or anything like that, like we can talk through that. But and the other criticism that I thought was weird was the fight scenes in Iron Fist,
the fight scenes.
which I did, because they were just different. They're more fluid. They're a little bit more elegant than Daredevil punching his way through Hell's Kitchen.
What is it? Oh man, the stair sequences in Daredevil are just ridiculous.
But like one of my favorite fight scenes in the whole all 4 was the Drunken Master fight in Iron Fist. Was just, I thought it was brilliant.
100%.
So, or the Punisher jail fight.
Oh my gosh!
Have you seen that yet?
Gruesome.
No.
Oh.
I don't think I've seen the jail one.
Oh, dude,
that was
season
so
2 of
gnarly.
Daredevil is amazing.
No, I haven't finished it yet.
For me, literally, out of any of those shows, that is the peak. But also just because it's Frank Miller.
And can we just, before we get into the Defenders, we're all super excited for the Punisher series with John Bernthal, right?
Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Blessings.
All right.
100%.
Well, for Iron Fist, foundationally, I think that show is kind of set up at a loss because of the race issues. And Josh, our sound guy, has just done. He read the Immortal Iron Fist run by Ed Brubaker, and I haven't read it yet, but he says it's interesting because so many people, and I'm all for diversity in the universes, like Zendaya becoming Mary Jane Watson. I had a narrative in my head back and forth, and I ended up being for it because I think that's just so cool. But the whole theme of Iron Fist that Josh says is the white man trying to insert himself into the yellow narrative and being cast as an outsider, which is a unique plot point.
Right.
And so when fans are getting all upset and because they didn't use this opportunity to cast an Asian actor, it's like, come on.
Well, and I thought that it was interesting that I don't know if this is in the original run of of the setup of the character, but there was some underlying, not subtle, but an undertone of the fact that Danny Rand came into this monastery and stole the Iron Fist from what could have been the rightful, whoever heir to it, whatever it was. So he was an outsider who came in and kind of stole that from this culture and then left. I mean, this was really this was one of the major themes, is he left Kunlun. Sorry. I was playing. I was playing Mortal Kombat. I was playing Mortal Kombat, and it's one of the characters is, I think, something like that. Kung Lao. Anyway, but yeah, so he left to go back and basically, as we talk about, try to get his parents' company back, and it's like, dude, you were supposed to defend this place. This is a really important place in our world, and you just left because you were some, essentially spoiled rich kid. Yeah. And, thought you could. So it's like, come on, man. Yeah, cool. So I think there was some of that addressed in the series.
But I guess going back to the Iron Fist or Arrow comparison, yeah, and I'd even point back to you, Keith, because the whole narrative of a hero going off on his quest to discover who he is and then coming back home to realize it's not how he left it. That's the Odyssey. And
well, yeah. I mean, this is for sure. I mean, this is why when we think about plots in comics, you can't get too upset if they repeat, because essentially they are all, and this is going to be Keith nerding out for a minute. Yeah. They're all archetypes. They're all hero's quest archetypes. It's about someone, like you said, going out. They're on a quest. They have a helper. They have an obstacle. It's very, very standard storytelling. Yeah. The point, I from what I've always felt with comics, is less about the originality of the storyline, the plot, and more about the characters themselves. Because the characters are unique, right? You look through history, you have the old demigods and all but none of them could shoot lasers out of their eyes. So there are some unique features that they're trying to explore, and what would this be to be a human who does have the immortal Iron Fist and has to deal with that responsibility? Or, going back to the classic Spider-Man line, with great power comes great responsibility. So how do you deal with that? You are literally, again, not to go on this, but you are literally a Superman, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? 100%. And I think that's what, it's less the plot. I will just say that, what I said, that was just why it was the least of the four series, but all of them have elements of that idea of the overcoming the obstacle and 100%. Trying to become the hero. So.
And but going back to the Arrow, the only objection I really have to the Netflix, and I'll probably get chewed out for this, series is that I think they take too long to get to the point. They're 13 episode seasons, and and I'm a major fan of make it 9 episodes.
Yeah, they could all be 10.
And they for sure. Yeah. But because they take so long, and a lot of people object to the CW Arrow shows because of this factor, but I love that they do those filler episodes where they fight King Shark. And it takes them longer to get to the end game of Flash and Savitar and Arrow and Prometheus. But half the fun of those series in themselves is the fact that, oh my gosh, Arrow just met the Dark Archer, Merlin, or him and Huntress just had a thing. And for me, just to see those characters come to life is half the fun.
Right.
And you almost sacrifice that on the Netflix shows, which is pursuing the one purple man or the
Right.
one.
Yeah. Well, and they're much more. I would say the Netflix ones are much more traditional, like cinematic storylines.
Yeah.
Whereas the Arrowverse is much more TV driven, like that old Batman, like
100%.
It's the or with the it's like the bad guy of the week or the monster of the week. Like it's more of that, where like you can have one-off episodes and it doesn't hurt the overall storyline. But when you have like they don't know if they were going to do or a second Daredevil or whatever, or if you're building up to the Defenders, then you. Yeah, I agree with you though. Like 13 episodes is too long. You just make it 10, get the story out, and then set up the next thing.
Yeah, and if they didn't have those fillers, then it's just which fast guy is Flash fighting today, right? It's like every season is.
By the grace of God, that's not going to be the case with the new season.
Right, and so kind of leading up to I have my concerns about the Defenders, right? Because I mean. These big casts, these amazing casts kind of coming and sharing one space makes me a little nervous. I mean, we saw how Suicide Squad turned out.
Oh my God.
And I know that this is different because they all kind of have their own separate introductions and you can kind of hit the ground running, but it still makes me nervous about all of these separate like storylines kind of leading to one place. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I get what you're saying because the one thing I will say about the Netflix films is like the bad guys, with the exception of Jessica Jones, have been very ambiguous, right?
100%.
So I imagine that this, because this has been the through line through all of them, is the hand and that whatever they're doing like in New York. But for me, what I've enjoyed is because this is the problem that's plaguing the Marvel movies. It's going to come up as soon as like once you're done with Thanos, who's next, right?
Oh my god!
So it's like keeping it small and keeping it character driven in the Netflix shows. I think if they can do that, because each of the characters have shown up in at least one other series. Right. So I think that's the helpful thing, where now we can say, oh, now that they're sort of fully meeting, you still have the same individual issues, and as long as you can deal with those, because then it's really just a 4-lead. It's a 4-lead series instead of maybe a 2-lead series, which they've been in the past, right?
Right.
The unfortunate thing is that I'll be more upset at is if they don't serve the other minor characters like Foggy, like
Night Nurse.
That's the concern, right? It's like, they're going to sprinkle all those. Those are going
to be gone, and it's just going to be on the main 4, which I would only be okay with if the main 4 is just the Defenders, and then they continue exploring those other relationships in the other series. But I am excited. I'm excited for the Defenders to, because I think I want to see how they all interact. Right? It's almost like it's going to seem like a weird comparison, but it's almost going to be like a dark superhero like version of Friends. You know what I mean? Like where they're like
good. No, you're right.
Like where like they're all contemporaries. They're all because the weird thing about the Avengers is like you kind of have to throw these big hitters in this weird. But like with these, they kind of, and this is in the trailer, like they kind of need each other to help each other, because in every single one of these instances, you've seen each one of them get overwhelmed, right? Whereas like, you kind of saw Iron Man get overwhelmed for half a second, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, but like when they came together, when they fought together, it wasn't as much a collaboration. It's like, everybody, you go there, you go there, you go there, where it's like in the fight scene that you see in the trailer for the Defenders, you know, Luke Cage has to protect, like Luke Cage is in the forefront, Jessica Jones is throwing people around, Daredevil has to like kind of keep himself oriented to the fight, and it's like, and then Iron Fist can't just run off and do whatever he wants. Like they have to learn to fight together because they're more human heroes.
100%. And the budget makes them a little more human too.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Of course. Cameron, what are you excited for with the Defenders?
Number one, like, it's always cool to see your heroes team up, and I really love the universe that they've set up, and I love the hand. Actually, one of the biggest points I'm really most excited for is what you're saying about the minor characters teaming up, because how cool is it? Because it's all about the resurrection of Elektra too. Right. How cool is it going to be to see Jessica Jones talk to Elektra and fight the hand when she's so powerful, and then you have Luke Cage who's coming in to a ninja movie where he's like, what am I going to do with myself? And the Iron Fist thing with the hand has been set up really nicely too.
Right.
So it's going to be really cool to see Finn Jones get really personal with who he's fighting.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the big ones. But even with the Defenders, I think it's going to be really interesting too to see this take, because I was looking it up earlier, and the original Defenders team is Hulk, Doctor Strange, Namor, and Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
And that's Roy Thomas in 1971. So it's going to be really crazy to see this new team, because the only comic iteration I've seen them in is the one that they've made recently to complement the TV show.
Right.
Those are two like very different specialties for those groups.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I'm actually the one thing I've appreciated with the Netflix films, the Netflix series, is that they are still connected to the cinematic universe, and you see the aftermath
100%.
of the Avengers.
Yes.
So you see what's happened when you introduce those big picture elements into the little picture of like Harlem, Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan, like all downtown Manhattan, all that. Like you see the different what's going to happen, and so the fact that they're not interested in the cosmic, they're not interested in the global, they're interested in we literally have to save New York, not humanity, right? Yeah. And I think that's what as long as they can kind of do that and keep it grounded to that, I think it'll serve the team well.
Yeah. Also, a major one that you just got me thinking about with the side characters being introduced is we're going to see Misty Knight and I'm forgetting Iron Fist's girlfriend. They're going to be the Daughters of the Dragon.
Daughter of the Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah, both of them, because you have the Heroes for Hire, but then also they're
Colleen Wing.
Colleen Wing. Thank you so much. You're going to see them interact, and at the end of Luke Cage, you see Misty Knight go and she sees a flyer for Colleen Wing karate training, and so obviously then we see that theme echoed in Iron Fist, and so to see those two interact, and contextually wise as a fan, going in to see that is going to be so cool to see them interact.
And also, I want to say Night Nurse, is that her name?
Yeah.
She's been in all of them too, like
Claire.
Rosario
Well,
Dawson.
that's her. Yeah.
Rosario Dawson's character, has been through, so that's interesting to see how they're all going to interact. So.
Yeah, obviously I'm excited for all those things and all these storylines coming together, but I'm really excited to see Sigourney Weaver as the villain.
Really?
That's going to take me back, right, to like aliens and stuff. Like I'm really excited to see how badass she is.
Yeah, she's such a cool pick too. Like she's a strong woman, villain, which is obvious. Like even thinking now, that's not something we see.
And I'm glad that they're using her in a TV in the small screen versions, because they've had a lot, and it's great. Like Kate Blanchett and a lot of other really great female actors have come into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 100%. So I'm glad they're going to use like a pretty heavy hitter in the smaller screens to try to reach more audiences and all that.
Awesome.
So
this Friday.
Yeah, Friday. So we'll probably at some point in a future episode at least talk about what we thought about it.
We'll give you a week or two before we spoil it all.
Right. All right, so that was Off the Page. Up next, we're going to be coming into our Top 5 segment.
Hey everyone, venture into the pop culture cosmos today, where you'll hear our conversations on different topics within the world of movies, TV, video games, comic books, technology, board gaming, and more. You'll also get a taste of some of our other shows within the cosmos as well. So come on and join us each week as we delve into the pop culture cosmos.
Welcome to the pop culture cosmos.
All right, so we'll kind of close things out with a little bit of discussion and opinions. So this week we're going to do my top 5 superhero shows. And basically I'm just going to give my opinions and watch Cameron get triggered on the other side of the table. So let's get started with my number 5, which is Gotham.
Oh my gosh. God awful.
Are we waiting for you to finish before Cam jumps in?
No, yeah. Go ahead, chime in on, do you think Gotham should be higher or lower?
Cam, you're up. I haven't seen Gotham, so I don't know.
I before I even respond, I want to hear why it's your favorite and maybe later object.
Honestly, I put it as 5 because I figured you'd have a big opinion about it.
Literally, I read a quote, and I think this quote sums up Gotham perfectly. They don't know whether it's the Christopher Nolan Dark Knight universe or the Joel Schumacher Batmans, because it is a healthy medium between the two, and they've veered so far off the comics that I just can't even.
Okay.
All
right. Can't even. Number 4 is Young Justice.
Oh, I should have put that on my list. Great. Oh, season 3.
Are they coming out with the season 3?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's going to be Young Justice Outsiders, which is so cool.
Is it the best animated series out there?
No.
What is it?
What's the best animated series? Superhero?
Batman the animated series. Bruce Timm, Paul Dini. It is everything.
Is it the best current animated series?
Oh, best one coming out right now? Absolutely. Yes. And the voice actors they have, voice talents, and what they've done with the characters is so amazing. I love that show.
Okay, great. Number 3 for me is The Flash.
Great, I love that show. It's like my favorite show to watch weekly, so you're good.
Okay. Second is Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones is my favorite, but like I love her. I love what she's done in the Defenders and stuff, but that show was because the 13-episode seasons and just kind of how long they build up the suspense. It was just like when she like snapped Kilgrave's neck, I literally said like, thank God, like this is over. You know, I had to convince myself to watch the last 30 minutes of that show because I just couldn't. I was like, I'm over this.
Yeah, it's about the complete opposite you could be of The Flash, which is like the most
100%.
upbeat like show that I watch probably, and then going to killing your family in an elevator. And then number 1 we touched about is Luke Cage for me.
Oh yeah,
that's my favorite.
That one dragged on, and the only objection I have to Luke Cage, and I love the show. I think episode 3 was probably like my favorite episode of that entire Netflix TV series when it ends with Cottonmouth freaking blowing up the restaurant he's in. I just thought that was amazing. But the fact that they built so far up to Cottonmouth and like this guy's huge, then they kill him off mid-season, and they have who's the final villain in that show? So it's the S.
Diamondback?
Diamondback, you're right.
Yeah.
Diamondback sneaks in. Oh, we're brothers. I'm like, come on, be cool.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, that plot twist didn't do it for me. Like that, I was, yeah.
But yeah, never watch Gotham.
Wait, so if you were to give us a top 5, what would yours be?
Okay, number 1.
These are TV shows, right?
Bruce Timm, yeah. Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, Batman the Animated Series. I personally like the New Adventures of Batman first, where they revamped all the characters for season 4. That show is my favorite ever. I think the Batman Superman World's Finest team episodes 3-episode run where Lex Luthor and Joker team up and Batman Superman team up. That is one of the. If they made the Batman v Superman movie off of that, I would have just been perfect. Number 2, Flash season 1, because I love season 1. It's Jeff Johns and Ethan Van Sciver's run of Flash Rebirth, which is my favorite. Every week I was waiting for the post-credit scene where you're just like, who is Harrison Wells? I remember.
Leave it to Cameron to like go into the season specifics.
I literally am season specific. 3, Daredevil season 2 because Frank Miller. Then 4th, I put Justice League and Avengers, but I'm gonna like cancel that out for Young Justice, especially Young Justice season 2 because so great. Wally West, R.I.P. And then 5, randomly enough, is Spectacular Spider-Man. Because I think his name's Josh Keaton, who did the voice. I thought he did great. I thought the whole Norman Osborn, Harry Osborn relationship dynamic was amazing on that show. And it was really just like a true Spider-Man personality. It was fun. And it ended too soon. So,
yeah,
that was good.
All right. So that was our top 5. Coming up is Cam Reads Comics.
This section is called Cameron Reads Comics, and actually it's titled after my hashtag on Instagram. So if you want to check out what I'm up to and what comic-related things I'm doing, open up hashtag Cameron Reads Comics. This section is some recommended reading for you, maybe based on what we've talked about on the podcast, and really some titles that just get me fired up. So this podcast's recommended reading, or Cam Reads Comics, is Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson. They have an omnibus option, which is the full run, and a complimentary Omnibus Companion, which is later issues by Frank Miller. That one's really good. That one has Man Without Fear and Daredevil Born Again, which are two great titles. But the original 1980s run that they did is in the original Omnibus, which is, I think, $125. So you have that one, but specifically they also have the 3-volume complete collection, which is really awesome. Specifically from the recommended reading, if you're balling on a budget, read Volume 2, which is where I think Bullseye and Daredevil Bullseye becomes one of the most deadly, scary, terrifying villains in the Marvel Universe ever. Where there's an issue where he, right before Daredevil 181, which is my favorite comic of all time, Daredevil and him fight at a carnival, and Bullseye has gone so crazy mentally that he sees every person in the carnival as Daredevil, which leads up tremendously to Daredevil 181, where the entire issue is narrated by Bullseye saying, I'm getting ready for you, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to fight you, and eventually the classic moment where he ends up killing Elektra. So that is all in, I believe, Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, Daredevil Volume 2. Check it out and try not to cry.
Well, I was excited to read it until you spoiled the ending there for me.
That came out in the 80s. Okay, watch Ben Affleck's Daredevil and be
it's
spoiled.
safe to talk about it now? Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's good.
That's good. You think Bullseye would be an awesome villain for the next season, right? They got to do a season 3.
Well, it's like, yes, I really do, but I think they kind of ruined it in season 2 because they made, I think it was the Hand who ended up killing Elektra. But for me, the panel is the most crazy one is Bullseye gets like a hold of a cart or something, and he like throws it at Elektra, and it hits her in the throat. She can't breathe, and he just comes out to her, and with her own sigh, thank you, right through the gut. And so it is so powerful, and she crawls over to Matt Murdock's apartment, and she's just like, she dies in his arms, and it's so sad. And you feel you're so emotionally connected to the character that it just wounds you deeper. And so they did that on the Daredevil season 2 where the Hand just kills her, and kind of in the same way. But man, you kind of took that moment away from Daredevil hating Bullseye. I mean, with everything, he ends up breaking all of the bones in his body. You took that moment away in season 2, but honestly, it was worth it because now we're going to see him fight the Hand. So,
yeah,
nice. All right.
All right, check it out.
Check it out, guys. All right, thanks for listening.
Well, guys, since we are a new podcast, if you like what you heard, please give us those 5-star reviews. We really appreciate it. Look for updates on Humannequin Media Facebook, and you can find the podcast and download it on podcast.com or your podcast app. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it. We'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time.
That's to us people that can feel things. It hurts.